The comments on yesterday's video on digital devices, primarily reverbs and delays and such, and their noisy attributes were very interesting. Some people assumed I was an idiot. Some people assumed I was doing something wrong. People questioned the power supply, the cables, etc., etc. So today we're going to revisit the Flint, and we're going to take a look at the Blue Sky, and the Hall of Fame Mini by TC, and revisit the MXR Reverb. And for power supplies, we're going to use the little switching wall wart that Strymon supplied with the Flint. We're going to use the Pedal Power 2, and we're going to use this Strymon Zuma that I borrowed and see if it makes any difference. To begin, we're going to compare the noise floor of the amp with nothing plugged in, actually with the guitar plugged in, but the volume at 0. It's a Strat here. It's an EJ Strat with Kinman noiseless pickups. We're using Neutrik Imagami cables, since people took exception to the fact that I used a monster cable yesterday. The power from the wall is already filtered and all that fun stuff. And we're starting with the Zuma. And we may change out to some other supplies, but people say the Zuma is the best. So let's see if it magically makes preamp mistakes go away. I don't think it will. Let's see if I'm right. So here's the noise floor of the amp without any pedals engaged. And here's the noise floor of the Blue Sky bypassed. This is in true bypass mode, or rather, it's always in true bypass mode unless you change it, but it's also in no spillover mode. If I change it to effect on, here's the noise floor. Noticeable, but not terrible. Let's put this in trails mode. Now the noise floor is higher than it was just with the effect on without the trails mode. So turning the effect on doesn't change the noise floor. If I go back to non-trails mode, still quite noisier when the effect is on, but when the effect is off, it's nice and quiet. Now, for perspective, I am being picky because that is literally my job, to find faults in things and see where I can make improvements. But that is well below the level of the guitar. So here's the dry guitar. So in a sense, when you're playing, you don't really notice that. The trouble is, if you have the effect off and you're in trails mode, that hiss is always there because the reverb and all that fills in the space. When you just play dry, all the spaces between the notes get heard, and if it's always going that's a little bit problematic. I will say the Blue Sky is quieter than the Flint and the Hall of Fame, and let me prove that. All right, so the Flint is now in true bypass mode without trails, and it's quiet in this configuration. It's not quite as quiet as not having the signal in line, but it's a little bit quiet. Let's see how the Flint in its best signal noise mode goes if I change to the wall wart supplied by Strymon rather than the Zuma. It's a little bit noisier with the wall wart than it is with the Zuma. Let's see how it is using the Pedal Power 2. All right, it's the same with the Pedal Power 2 as it is with the Zuma. People in the video yesterday were making all kinds of claims that the Zuma magically fixed a lot of problems that they had with their rig. Any benefits it would have would be if you have multiple pedals running off the same power supply. In this case, we're just looking at the best case scenario for one pedal by itself. And there's no difference in this application between the Pedal Power 2 and the Zuma. So here's what it sounds like. So that's a good sounding reverb. It's just a shame about that little bit of white noise in the background. At least you can make it go away if you bypass it, but again, you lose your trails. All right, the MXR Reverb with the Zuma and with the pedal power too has one advantage. It's a little bit audible background noise when bypassed, but you get trails and a relatively quiet bypass mode. So when the effect is on, the hiss comes up, but you still get trails with a lower hiss with it bypassed. So that's an advantage of this. And I'm going to go back to compare the shimmer effect on this to the Strymon Blue Sky from the client. Let me show you one of the contender though. All right, certainly the least expensive in the roundup, this Hall of Fame Mini by TC Electronic. In bypass, there's no noise. There is a slight hiss and a very high frequency whine when it's turned on. Let's see if that follows the... It's independent of the reverb level mix, so it's inherent to the system. This is being powered by the Zuma, so, you know, I guess best possible power supply. Not a bad sounding little unit. To really get into what it does, you have to hook it up to USB and do the computer programming, which I don't have time for in this video, but a little bit of switching noise. You don't get trails, but it's not adding noise to the board when it's not on, and the noise it is adding is pretty subtle. But I can definitely hear a high-pitched whine, and that's problematic. I've got a good power supply. Everything here is grounded, good cables. That's going to rule this out for our consideration. A shame. Other than that, it sounds quite nice. Aside from that really painfully high-pitched whine, it sounds great. All right, so here we have the MXR Reverb upside down. Just to do the cabling layout on this, I'm using the end of an amp here so I can get it up to a good level with the light and all for you to see. So I'm going to compare the shimmer presets on each of them. Well, I gotta say they sound better together than either does by itself, but I have only used them now in this video really, so I'm not the expert on programming these. There aren't that many useful parameters. I bet this has got some secondary functions of which I am unaware. I know that this has got some other tricks up its sleeve somehow. So this is a surface level reading of the shimmer possibilities of these pedals. The noise floor on the MXR Reverb, the Strymon Blue Sky, the Strymon Flint, these are not horrible things. I'm not saying that, oh, it's so bad, can't possibly make music with these. I'm saying that it is odd, since it has been very possible in consumer grade electronics for the past 15 years or so to have very quiet, inexpensive digital to analog and vice versa converters, that so many things aimed at the guitar market just aren't really taking that noise floor into consideration. And they publish incredible specs. 115 dB, single noise ratio. Well, no. If it was 115 dB, we wouldn't be hearing it. And I can hear it audibly from across the room. It's not a subtle thing once you know what to listen for. Again, once the hi-hats kick in, this all becomes moot, but it's nice to have as clean and quiet a signal as possible.